welcome to another episode of the Outside Insider podcast here on Philly Sports Network with myself, Liam Jenkins. This is an emergency episode. Everything has gone wrong. It's a chaotic spree in Philadelphia sports. It has been the weirdest day possible. But you guys demanded 3 episodes. I told you last show, I was like, if you want a 3rd episode this week, all you've got to do is ask. Let me know you want it. I will deliver. And for context purposes, I got up this morning on 2 hours sleep. I worked a 9-hour shift at my second job. I posted 3 articles, edited a bunch more. Get home at 9 p.m. It's now 9:45 after writing another article, and we're recording the damn podcast. Like, I will not stop if you guys want this. If you want to hear this show, I'm all in on you, as long as you're all in on me. And that is what is different about this podcast. It's such a cool thing to see this community grow. And if you want to be part of it and you're not already, you've now got 3 options to subscribe. So the typical subscription speech at this point, if you're new around here, goes: big red button for YouTube, which we want to hit 5,000 subscribers by the end of the year. We're getting close, but we need your help. So if you're sat there, you're tinkering over that button and you're not sure, slap it down. Just give it a punch now, right? Stop messing around. Game's over, alright? It's fun time's done. We're here now for serious talk. Get that subscription button hit. You've got iTunes as well. If you're an Apple fan, if you've got an iPhone or a Mac or an iPad, hit that button, go to iTunes, tap subscribe. That's the best way to support this podcast. But wait, Liam, I don't like Apple. I've got an Android. I've got a Samsung or another third-party brand of phone. Don't worry, because now we're on Spotify. Now there is no excuse not to hit either of those 3 buttons. So if you could hit either of those, that would mean the absolute world to me. But let's get into this, okay? Let's just get into just a mad day. And if I seem a little off, if I feel like my words are slurring a bit and the comparisons are bad and the analogies are awful, it's just a regular... No, I'm kidding. It's been a long day. I'm on minimal sleep. I'm trying here on my 4th cup of coffee. You've got to bear with me here, alright? But I get on the train home from work. Okay, it's a nice train home. It's relaxed. It's cool. I'm sat there with a foot-long Subway. It's an Italian BMT, for context. Because if you order anything else from Subway, you're a scrub. Alright, I don't know what the American menu's like, but the Italian BMT is just the way to go. That's just the law. So I was sat there thinking, what am I going to write about when I get home? Like, what's the view going to be? What am I going to discuss here? And then I realised I hadn't checked Twitter in a while, so I scrolled up and, well, would you believe it? You can't just have a quiet week in Philadelphia. Carson Wentz has back spasms. Well, that's normally a temporary muscle injury, right? That can't be too bad, I suppose. I mean, I have back spasms getting up in the morning, to be honest. I've just noticed that on another note. I'm 23 years old, right? I can't be the only one that when I physically get up out of bed, that I grunt, that I'm like, ugh, whenever I get... I'm not even 50, 23 years old, alright? That's not good. I can't be the only one, though. Please reassure me in the comments. Someone pulled me up on this once, and I've been paranoid about it ever since. But Carson Wentz has back spasms. I told you this show was going to go off the road. Carson Wentz has got back spasms, which means that he's going to miss Week 14 against the Rams, which conveniently was, of course, the game last year, this same week, or the 14th game, where he tore his ACL against the same team. Which is a little bit coincidental, a little bit scary, a bit eerie, that, isn't it, in the grand scheme of things. But then I do some more digging, and I find out that apparently, according to numerous reports and sources, that Carson Wentz may not play another game this season. Now, there are only 4 left, and this is the one thing I really dislike about this stage in the NFL season, because everything gets so dramatised. Like, the Eagles put Corey Clement on IR because he's injured with 4 games to go. What else do you want him to do? Just hobble onto the... It just doesn't make sense. Like, IR at this point is irrelevant. Now, if you're injured, you're going on IR. It's not, shall we keep him around and see if he gets better because of the time frame? It's IR. It's not, oh my god, he's gone to IR, he's injury prone. It's like, there's 4 games left, okay? The season at this point has run its course. The direction is set for most teams. IR is the place you go if you are injured. You're not going to get the turnaround time. That's understandable. But this Carson Wentz scenario is different. Now, we can look into this injury. If you've seen my film ream that I uploaded yesterday, you're probably drawing the same comparisons I am, in that I genuinely feel that this injury stems from the mechanics. That, again, without kind of ruining the film ream, you can see that he's kind of, when throwing, overpowering, overloading the top area of his body. So, because he's not planting that front leg down, he doesn't want to put weight on the rehabbed ACL that's still probably a lot weaker than his stronger leg, that he's almost taking weight off that and not driving through. So his feet aren't set properly, he's almost having to load up his back leg a lot more, and his back and his torso as a result is really having to drive through with an extra motion. And this is why we're seeing so many sporadic overthrows and underthrows. If you haven't seen the film room video yet, I would urge you to take, I think it's 15 minutes of your time to do so, because it does add a lot of context to this injury. A lot of people are wondering how Wentz has got back spasms when you're being thudded blindsided 3-4 times a game, and you're constantly twisting your body in a violent motion to snap a ball because you can't drive through it with your lower body. I think it's very easily understandable to see where this has come from. Now, I may be wrong. I'm no medical professional. I'm not a quarterback guru. I'm just a man that spends nearly all of my free time studying film, trying to look at players, understand tendencies, and read as many books as I can on this wonderful sport. Now, with that said, we can go into the ifs, buts, and maybes and the whys all day long, but for some reason, there's been a massive debate on Twitter, and I knew it was going to happen, and I knew exactly who was going to spearhead it. And you could take every Philadelphia beat writer, put them into a hat, and the first one to leap out like a salmon with a clickbait headline would be, you've said it in your head, I don't need to say it for you. Okay? That's not a shot, it's just brutal honesty. We all know who we're talking about here. But what we've got now is this debate where some fans are citing that, oh my god, the Eagles should trade Carson Wentz. If Nick Foles wins a game, if Nick Foles wins 2 games, Carson Wentz is gone. Like, if Nick Foles wins 3 games and he wins the Super Bowl, like, can we slow down a minute? Just one tiny second. It's possible that Foles goes on this second miraculous run. Here is the ultimate Carson Wentz to Nick Foles comparison. You are 14 years old. I'm not insulting you, I'm just giving an analogy, alright? Please don't take that badly. You're 14 years old. It's Christmas, alright? What do you want for Christmas at 14? You want to play Fortnite, right? You want to play PUBG with the boys. You want to get yourself a brand new, shiny Xbox One or PS4. That's the debate. Which one do you want? Personally, I had a PS4. I got an Xbox because all my friends had it, and I didn't have any friends on PS4. And by all my friends, I mean 2. And I wanted to play Madden with them. So that happened. But one of those two, those are the landmark consoles. Those are the consoles you invest valuable money in to get 5 or 6 years of time out of, that give you wonderful graphics, plenty of memories and funny moments and gorgeous gameplay and online functionality and all of this, the new stuff that's going to define the next 5 years, right? I mean, when I sit playing Xbox now, I talk to my friends who are sometimes hundreds of miles. I mean, I talked to one of my writers called Yamil Roman, who covers the Sixers here for Philly Sports Network. We play Fortnite together sometimes. We're going to play 2K together. He's in America. That's the future. That's what you invest around. But do you know what always has a place in your heart? Do you know what always comes out? That PlayStation 1. Right? Because that PS1 gave you the best memories. It gave you the pixelated boobs of Lara Croft. Or just a 7-year-old Liam. I mean, could be just me on that one. But you had Crash Bandicoot. You had all sorts of, Metal Gear Solid. I was going to say Virtua Golf, but I was a sad child remembering Virtua. If my childhood was Virtua Golf. But PlayStation 1, you're all going to have fond memories. Maybe it was a Mega Drive. Maybe it was an NES. But you had a console and you loved it. And 20 years down the line, you revisit that console. And sometimes, you just want to go back. You want to go back, and you want to put in FIFA 99, the greatest soccer game of all time, might I add, and you just want to slide around with Dennis Bergkamp for a bit. If you haven't done that, do it. But the thing about the PlayStation 1, it's outdated, it's older, it's simple, it's toned down, it's glitchy, you don't know if the disc is going to work anymore, and it makes that weird whirring noise, like before you get into the menu. That's the difference between Carson Wentz and Nick Foles. You had the greatest memory of your life when Nick Foles won. I mean, you may not be, you may have got married, that would probably top the Super Bowl. I should hope so. If it doesn't, I don't know, maybe you got married on the Super Bowl. But what I'm saying, obviously, is that the greatest moment of your Eagles fan life was when Nick Foles won the Super Bowl. Against all odds. They beat Atlanta, they beat the Vikings, they go and beat the Patriots. But at the end of the day, if you're going to go into a store and you want to buy a console, you're not looking for that memory, because you know that along with that Super Bowl came his time with the Rams, came his final season with the Eagles before he re-signed, came the fact he almost retired. Now, I'm not taking a dump on Nick Foles. I think everyone can agree Nick Foles deserves a statue in everyone's back garden ever in Philadelphia for the work he's done. But he's not Carson Wentz. He's not built like Carson Wentz. He can't do the things that Carson Wentz can. Maybe this season he can. I need to recite that argument. But typically, if we compare it to last year, drastically different quarterbacks. Carson Wentz was at a league MVP level form. Nick Foles wasn't. Nick Foles struggled in that first game. That first regular season game after Carson Wentz went down with injury. And this is the thing we seem to forget. So I beg your pardon, it wasn't that game. That game, I believe, was the Giants. It was the one after that. So he came out against the Giants, obviously blew everyone away. I think he had a 4-touchdown game against the Giants, if I remember rightly. So it was the Oakland game where he wasn't too great and he threw the interception, and then Oakland kind of snuck back into the game and it was really hit and miss. And I think, again, off the top of my head, he completed like nearly half of his passes, and everyone started doubting him at that point. And everyone's like, whoa, hang on a minute, he threw for under 200 yards and the Raiders nearly come back and win. And then obviously he doesn't look too great against the Cowboys for the like 10 snaps he plays in there. So there was that whole mystique of like, well, are we going to get the Nick Foles who just blitzed the Giants, or are we going to get the Nick Foles who just almost laid an egg against the Oakland Raiders, right? And that's the thing, like, that was a PlayStation 1. There were some gems on the PlayStation 1. Like, again, Tomb Raiders, like, probably my favourite game of all time. I'd spent so money, even like, Championship Manager for all the nerds. All the old Formula 1 games, like Gran Turismo. It was so great, but you play it now, and it's so simple, and it's glitchy, and it doesn't work, and it's clunky. And the thing is with Nick Foles, that offense was so simplified for him. It was so condensed. It was built for him to succeed. Because it would have been too complex to expect anything above that. And it wouldn't surprise me if we see the same again. Now, that's fine. But just because you can go back to a PlayStation 1 and you can play Gran Turismo and enjoy that sound of the lights going out, it doesn't mean you're going to go out and buy, like Gran Turismo on the PS3 the next week and pretend it's the same thing. Because it's not. What Carson Wentz can do, what Carson Wentz is to this team, is remarkable. And I spoke this in the video on the film room yesterday, that even now, with all of this criticism, with the injury, with the setback, with the ACL recovery, with the mechanics, with everything else, the man is literally mirroring the season of a man who won MVP in 2017, Tom Brady. Even with all of this going on, Wentz is still firing at a nearly 70% clip. And he is having a season better, or near enough equal to, Tom Brady's MVP winning campaign last year. And somehow, we're going to choose the PlayStation 1. Like, fine, okay. Like, you're going to go to the PlayStation 1 if you want those old memories, if you have to. Maybe you can't get access to your Xbox, maybe your brother's on it and you just want a cheap thrill. Fine. But that's not what... If you're going to go and invest in a console for the next 5 years, I can guarantee you now it is not a PlayStation 1. You do not want something that's overtly simple, that's limited, that's going to get kind of grinding on you after a while. And although it gave you the most special memories of your childhood, it's not going to deliver the same. And I think even in a scenario where Nick Foles goes, and let's just say for the sake of this podcast, that he goes out and wins the Super Bowl. Like somehow the Eagles team, who are fighting for a wildcard spot, win out from here, then beat Dallas in a playoff game, then likely it's going to be at this point, I don't know who I'm going to wager at this point, but maybe the Saints, I would say. I mean, the NFC playoff picture is so wide open, it's ridiculous. But if we just take a look at it for a second, it's likely going to be the Saints or the Rams. It could be the Bears, depending if they can sneak through the wildcard round. Maybe the Seahawks as well. But if somehow Nick Foles goes and wins it all and beats these incredible teams and the underdog masks come back out and Philadelphia has the most miraculous... It would be euphoric if the team won the Super Bowl under Nick Foles. The takes would be suicidal. Like, I could not imagine anything worse. Because then you're going to hear, well, Nick Foles has won 2 Super Bowls. Nick Foles has gone to the playoffs. Nick Foles doesn't get hurt sometimes. Let's trade Carson Wentz to the Jags. Like, no. Because the truth of the matter is that you're running 2 different offenses with 2 different quarterbacks. And they give you different things. Don't get me wrong, I'm excited to see what Nick Foles can do with Golden Tate in the offense. What he can do with a Josh Adams. What he can do with a Dallas Goedert. Weapons that he didn't have last year. What he can do with Jordan Matthews. That's going to be interesting, right? But, I mean, that's like saying, I want to see what the PS1 can do when I plug a steering wheel into it. I want to see what the PS1 can do when I've got one of those little light guns that don't work properly. And, like, you just shoot it at a light bulb because it cheats and then somehow registers. Honestly, playing Resident Evil was a nightmare. That's literally what this is. Like, I would love nothing more than for Nick Foles to ball out and somehow get this team to the playoffs and somehow get to the Super Bowl and somehow win it. But realistically, it won't happen. And if it does, then he's going to go and start somewhere else. And he'll be someone else. It's like you're giving that PS1 to another kid. Because it's giving you, it can't give you anything more. Like, he'll go and start somewhere. That's what Nick Foles wants. He said it at the beginning of last offseason. At the minute, he's got a potential out on his contract in 2019 if he gives back the $2 million salary bonus. Also interesting, on this Nick Foles contract, okay, that a lot of people are overlooking, they're saying, oh, well, if Nick Foles wants to leave, he's going to have to pay back that $2 million salary. That's very true. Great point. Well done. Do you know what else, okay, is buried in the contract of Nick Foles? That the Eagles, including Malcolm Jenkins, including, I think, Brandon Brooks, Brent Selleck, all restructured their deals to give this man a raise, okay? Here are the annual incentives he gets. If he completes, on an annual incentive, at least 62.5% of his passes, he gets $250k. If he plays 50% of snaps in a playoff game, $250k. If he, let's see what else, he's not really going to realistically hit any of those other ones. The main one is he gets $250k per game played, right? Then $500k with a win. That is the best job in the world. Just for showing up. For showing, you've already been paid. Like, they reworked his deal to give him $4 million, alright? He's got a 13 mil cap hit this year for the Eagles. $13 million. Alright, that is insane for a backup quarterback. And then, just for showing up to work, he gets $250k and $500k if he has a good shift. That's unreal. Absolutely unreal. Absolutely, if Nick Foles comes into this season and now balls out, beats the Rams, beats the Texans, beats the Redskins, goes into the playoffs, does whatever, he's going to start somewhere else. He will take that out because that $2 million bonus, he's just made about 6 of it back. He's literally being paid to walk away. And the Eagles will look back on that last offseason saying, should we have given up a pick for him? Should we have accepted a trade from the Browns? Should we have done this? Should we have done that? There's so much to talk about in this scenario, and I know I'm going to ramble, and we've been talking about retro games consoles for a solid 20 minutes now, but if you are new around here, guys, if you like what we're doing again, make sure you're subscribing. Like, we have actually got, at this point in time, as I say, we've got Spotify, Apple Music or Apple Podcasts, whatever you want to call it, and YouTube as well, and Spreaker, and we're trying to get to iHeartRadio, and there's some exciting plans for 2019. We're going all in on this show. But what we're going to do now, because I know you guys have been waiting so long for it, and you've had enough of me talking about these games consoles right now, is we're going to do the part of the show that was actually demanded by someone today, and I almost cried. And it's not more stories about Deb the Cleaner. I'm sure we can bring her out. You know, maybe we'll get her as a ghost on the show. But the thing is, someone tweeted me earlier and saying, will the pod have listener questions, and quote tweeted Ariana Grande saying thank you next. So here we are, your favourite part of the show. It's mine as well. Thank you next. Daniel Ratajak asks me, why is my life a mess? I don't know why I'm doing this anymore, and now my life's a mess. Well, I knew this would happen. I knew that at some stage it would all come down to this. Maybe it's Eagles related, Dan. Maybe you're eating too many carbs. Maybe it's a Jack Daniels. Maybe it's a heroin addiction. Maybe you're just not very good at Fortnite. It could be either of those options. I would honestly put it down to the fact that you're listening to me talk about retro games consoles now 3 times a week potentially. That's a lot of time given up, you know? I mean, I think my life's a mess for being in this spot on the other side of the microphone. But beggars can't be choosers. This is getting a very deep life conversation. Thank you. Next, Taco asks, what off-season moves will the Eagles do to trim down cap space? That's a great point. I mean, ideally, I think this Eagles team can get to around 29 million in cap space. It's difficult because of the multi-year summary that you're going to have. Like, there are a lot of deep contracts embedded with this team. And when you look at how that's spread out, so guys in 2019, there's 100 million invested on the offensive line alone, which is crazy. You've got 62 million in the secondary, which is crazy. Quarterbacks are a little bit different because that's obviously going to free up with Nick Foles. But if you look at this roster, if you look at the way it's freed out, I mean, you've got someone like Timmy Jernigan, who has $11 million to his name, a $13 million cap hit, and after the injuries he's had this year, he finally comes back from it and then gets injured again. It would not surprise me if the Eagles try and move him. You look further down, Nelson Aguilar is on the books for $9 million with an option. I'd highly doubt that stays. They're either looking at a restructure with a new deal, or you're looking at Golden Tate or Jordan Matthews. Either of those to be the cheaper option. I genuinely believe that at this point. A little bit further down, there aren't too many big names that are going to sit out other than Jason Peters. And Jason Peters is a man, as we all know, who has given his lifeblood to the Philadelphia Eagles for so many years now. But at 15 years, I mean, I think as far as I'm aware, he's going to be, it's like a club option next year, so I don't think he's going to be back. So he's technically an unrestricted free agent in 2020, which does give him, I think, 1 more year on a club option, if I'm not mistaken, without looking at the deal. But it is around an 8 million cap hit, so don't be surprised if he goes as well. Thank you. Next, Robin asks, Ags or Tate, how does Hollins fit in? Les Burr made it sound like they don't think of him as a speed option, actually. What speedy receiver would you draft and when? That's a lot. Between Aguilar and Tate, that's a very tricky one. I would honestly take the upside of Nelson Aguilar. I don't care about the yards after the catch, because at this point, the Eagles aren't getting him in a position to utilise that. That's literally like having a Porsche and having nowhere to drive it. It's like buying a Formula 1 car and just having it sit in your garage. I was going to say garage, and it sounded so posh. But you wouldn't do it. The Eagles have got this, weapon in Golden Tate, and they can't figure out, I guess, how to best utilise it. So Nelson Aguilar fits the scheme far more. We learned that last year. Les Bowen, as you say, made it sound like they don't think of him as a speed option. I don't know. I think it's really strange. They're trying to fit him into the offense and mould Tate into the offense, as opposed to moulding the offense around Tate, which is definitely the best way of doing it. If you compare his production to where he was at the Lions, I mean, the game before last was actually really good. I think it's a game-by-game basis, but we'll have to wait and see. As opposed to which speedy wide receiver I would draft, I'm trying to keep all of my draft takes for now condensed, because I know, if I'm brutally honest with you, I know a lot of guys will lie about this, but I have not done my draft research yet. I wait for the NFL season to finish, and then I dig into the film, using all of the sources that are available. So the draft breakdown website is phenomenal for game tape and getting full games and looking at players. So for me, my draft work starts after the season. Some people lie and somehow watch every NFL game, every college game, and know everything about everyone. Like, just don't, a lot of people just Google it and pretend they know stuff. I'm just dead ass honest with you. Draft stuff for me doesn't start until after the season. So Robin also asked us, a great video yesterday. Noticed that you flagged his back not being straight away. Could be an issue for those the back injury. Thank you so much, Robin. Honestly, it means a lot. Thank you so much for watching the videos and for listening to the show. Deceased Eagles fan, opinion on coaches Doug should hire. Do you know what? Here's a name I'm going to throw out, okay? And this is not... So I know a lot of people are going to look at the college coaches and the big names and John DeFilippo, who I don't think will come back, purely because I know for 100% certainty that DeFilippo wants to be an offensive coordinator. He tried it with the Browns, it failed. He's tried it with the Vikings, he's not ready yet. He's clearly got a mind with the quarterbacks, but he doesn't want to be limited. He wants play calling experience, and he's not going to get that with the Eagles. And I've heard from numerous people that he's a very touted coach. A lot of people want him because of the work he did with Derek Carr, because of what he did with Carson Wentz in his rookie year, and because of what happened in 2017. So DeFilippo wants play calling experience, and I think at this stage he's gonna get it somewhere. Now, one name I'm gonna turn to, if I'm brutally honest, and you're all gonna probably hate me for it, is Jim Bob Cooter. Like, I honestly, the Jim Bob Cooter effect, that first year he came in with Matt Stafford was amazing. And I don't care how you look at it, like, he really did transform the way that Lions offense worked. Now, like the Eagles, the Lions have a lot of banged up players, a lot of injuries. They obviously take Golden Tate out of the situation. Their offensive line hasn't been fantastic. And it's so strange. But I think in this point, there's a lot of talk amongst, especially Lions fans and blogs and analysts, that because Matt Stafford's passing yards have been down, or because their passing offense, which goes hand in hand with passing yards, believe it or not, is down, that Cooter is to blame. So I would honestly, at this point, I love Jim Bob Cooter. He's a young offensive mind. He's got a great vision. I think the way they're beginning to use Kenny Golladay over the last few weeks since Golden Tate's trade is going to be vital. So yeah, I mean, if the Lions for some reason part ways with Cooter, I would say that is I was going to say banging, that's so British, oh my god, but that would be the perfect replacement in my eyes for an offensive coordinator. But other than that, they have to look at a quarterback coach. There's no other ways about it. Press Taylor has done nothing of relevance. John DeFilippo was at least in the eye, was at least constantly talking to media, and you had a rough estimate of what he was doing. I don't think we've had that at all with young Press of Taylorton, and that's fine. Like, some quarterback coaches are more concise, but for someone to be struggling as much as Wentz has mechanically, would there be no improvement, as I said last podcast, from week 3 to where we are now? It's a little bit startling. We're going to move on. Thank you. Next, we're going on to our YouTube comments now, because, oh yeah, you know that I post on this little community tab, which I've just discovered on my phone. So you've got a couple questions on here. Actually, I hyped that up for no reason. That's actually really sad. I thought I did. I haven't got any questions on there. So thank you to everyone that's just not answered a question. You're like, great, you are the best. I can't believe that. This is why you don't record these things live and you pre-record them and edit them out later. But do you know what? I'm going to leave that in because that sums up my life. I opened up the YouTube app on my phone, ready to answer the questions, and there's just been a like and no questions. So thanks whoever liked it. I appreciate the moral support. But that was Thank You Next. Honestly, I love this part with you guys. It's my favourite part of the show. Hearing your guys' questions, knowing that you get something out of this as well, that we get to connect, have a discussion. It's honestly my favourite thing in the world. So thank you for all of your support, because the way this podcast has grown since the start of the regular season has been mad. And it wouldn't be possible without you. And the fact that you all take time out of your day to listen to what some whiny British kid has to say, it genuinely means a lot to me. So thank you. But before we get too soppy, we've got one more topic to discuss, and that is my actual take on this situation, which I don't think I've actually given yet, as to what I would do if I was Doug Peterson, whose head has got to be spinning more than the beat writer we so gracefully didn't name drop earlier on, right? If you are the head coach of this team and you have Nick Foles going out there as your backup, who's likely leaving anyway, is that really the direction you want to go? Now, the reason I say this is because Nate Sudfeld, the QB3 on this team, is an unrestricted free agent after this season. And as of right now, you don't really know what you have in him because he's had such limited experience. And the way I'm viewing it, this whole Carson Wentz injury, Nick Foles coming in, Nate Sudfeld on the sideline scenario, is let's rewind 5 years, okay? All your music was on, like, do you remember those little Walkman CD players? Like, and how great they were. Whenever you go in a car, you go over a speed bump and it'd jump everywhere. So you had to like hold it, and it was like buzz wire because it'd just get out and sing. That's fine, right? That's how everyone listens to music. That's great, but you know that's going to go in like the next year or two, right? Because MP3 players are coming round. So your next purchase isn't going to be a CD player. You're going to want an iPod or an MP3 player or something a bit more portable that doesn't do that. So instead of spending an unnecessary 6 months with this annoying Walkman where you're going to lose it anyway, like you know in your heart, you're like, I'm not going to keep this forever. It won't be around forever. We've had our best moment listening to, I don't know, Destiny's Child, because that's my music taste, apparently. I can't believe I've just said that. But you don't. You look for the future. And the Eagles don't know what they have in Nate Sudfeld right now. So if you think back to last offseason, okay, Nate Sudfeld comes in week 17 against the Cowboys, doesn't look too bad at all. That offseason that followed, Nate Sudfeld was dominating training camp. Now, whether Nick Foles was taking it easy or just a vet that was probably walking around with a bit of swag, some of those Supreme box logos on because he's just won Super Bowl 52, doing his book signings, like, I don't know. But Sudfeld looked like the hungrier quarterback throughout. He showed it in preseason with a much more aggressive arm. He was far more confident taking shots down the field and willing to move the chains, even with his legs. Mechanically, he looked far better. There were some, problems I noted in a film room before week 17 last year. Those had gone by preseason this time around. But the thing is, you're going to need a backup. Like, at this point, Carson Wentz has had an injury every year since 2015. That's not injury prone. One, he literally banged his wrist against a helmet in 2015, somehow broke it, and then still came back and won a national championship. 2016, he missed preseason. 2017, obviously, we had the ACL, and now we've got the back spasm. It's not like these are all serious mega injuries. They just seem to be happening at the worst times. It's very much like Sidney Jones. But if it's taught us anything, it's that the Eagles really, really, really need an insurance policy. And as of right now, both insurance policies could be out of that building the minute the regular season ends. Now, if you go and start Nick Foles, Nate Sudfeld, got to be elevated to QB2, maybe sound, but if he gets an offer to be a QB2 somewhere else, are you really going to say no if a Jacksonville comes sniffing? If you know that someone like maybe, let's say, Carolina could be sniffing. Let's say, who else can we put in? Maybe Washington could be sniffing. Are we really going to rule that out? A young arm, someone that's already been on the team, someone that has been extremely good as well. Let's be brutally honest here in his limited time. The players have rallied. Mac Hollins said that the man's got Pro Bowl potential. Wish he did that for me on Madden, but that's a different story. We'll get to that in another YouTube series. So, he's got plenty of talent. If Sudfeld is going to go out and ball out, the Eagles need to know what they've got in him. If you keep him on the sideline forever, and you get to a point where Nick Foles goes and you bring Sudfeld back on the cheap, fine, but what happens when Wentz goes down again? And you throw Sudfeld in, who's had one game in 3 years. Then what? You're expecting a Nick Foles-esque performance? You can't get that without experience. What makes Nick Foles so unique is that he has started for so many different scenarios. From the Chip Kelly era to the Rams, to the Chiefs, back to the Eagles, to the Super Bowl. He's now been and done it all. As a backup, as a starter, as everything. Sudfeld hasn't. And you can't hang your hat on Nick Foles because of that salary bonus, because of the fact he wants to be a starter, because of the fact there is going to be a very hungry free agent market that can offer a lot more than what the Eagles can. So if my name is Doug Peterson and I'm viewing this quarterback picture, I'm not putting my money on Nick Foles because it's not going to get a return. At best, this season could be salvaged from an abysmal wreck. And then what is the point? Okay, if your house is burning down, okay, and you get your dog out of the building, do you go back in for the dog's toy? No, there's no point. You're not going to go back in. You've got everything you need out of it. You come out unscathed. You've got everyone you can around you. You lose the house, but you move on. Probably. I've never lost a house. I couldn't really relate to that. But I just can't see how logically starting Nick Foles, if you lose more than one game and you don't start Nate Sudfeld, something is hereditary wrong. If the Eagles lose to the Rams, they are now 12.5 underdogs on the spread. If they lose to the Rams and Nate Sudfeld does not start against the Texans, I don't know what to expect. Because to me, a loss to the Rams really does hammer that nail in the coffin. Like, you know that scene in Lord of the Rings where Boromir dies? And if you haven't seen Lord of the Rings, don't worry about it. He's not called Boromir, he's called Steve. He's totally fine. Doesn't get shot at all, not even 3 times. But there's the scene in the first Lord of the Rings film, right, where Boromir redeems himself and it's heroic and he's killing everything and he gets shot with an arrow. And then he comes back and fights again and gets shot with a second arrow. And then a third arrow. Like, you get to a point and this season it's like, what are you fighting for? At that point, it's a commendable effort. But if you drop one game, you might as well just run. Accept the fact that it's not going to do... It's just an audition tape for Nick Foles. And I know you want to do him good. And the team wanted to do Darren Sproles good. And that really hasn't fared well, given that in 2 games back, he hasn't been targeted on a pass once. It's so bizarre. And as great as it would be to see Nick Foles off into the sunset and to see him land with another magical team, that's not this team's responsibility. The responsibility is building for the future. They need an insurance policy for Carson Wentz, and that will not be Nick Foles so long as he wants to start or his future is uncertain. Nate Sudfeld wants to be a quarterback in the NFL. That much is certain. Nick Foles could retire. Nick Foles could make a film. Nick Foles could start a charity skydiving organisation. We don't know. He's got kids now, he's got a wife, he's settled, he's happy. He may just want to go, do you know what? I'm going to have one more run, I'm going to call it a day. And I wouldn't blame him in the slightest. But you can't, as a boss, just give your friend like an extra hour's pay because he's been there longer and then he's leaving in a week when you've got a new guy who could train up and do that job just as well for much longer. From a managerial perspective, if you run a retail shop and you've got your colleague leaving and he's been there 30 years and it's his final week and you're like, let's just give him all the new guys new hours, how is the new guy going to know when to take over? Because the old guy's been there having it's like Kobe Bryant's retirement party. That went on for an entire year. Every game he went to was like some sort of worshipping ceremony. It was bizarre. We can't have that. And the Eagles have to realise that this is about the long-term future now. Forget winning now. They've tried winning now every week and they can't do it. They can't win one. They have to think about the long-term future. They need an insurance policy for Wentz and they have to find out if Nate Sudfeld is the guy. So if I'm Doug Peterson, it may not be this week, but next week, Nate Sudfeld is my guy against the Houston Texans. Let me know what you think, guys. Thank you so much for listening to this emergency episode. I've just dropped my deodorant can. That made a noise. Oh, I knew it'd be a shambles. Thank you so much for putting up with a very sleep-deprived Liam Jenkins today. If you want to tweet me, get in contact. Let's go back and forth at Liam Jenkins21. Leave a comment. Let me know what you thought. Hit subscribe so I stop going on about it. It's the only way you're going to shut me up. That's the best way to view it. You've got the red one for YouTube. We're on Spotify. We're on Apple Podcasts. We will see you later this week for your 3rd episode of The Outside Insider in a week. See you then.